What you're about to learn is easily one of the greatest secrets of the rich, and if you don't know and understand this simple idea, you will most likely be poor forever. And the story starts with our friend Bob, and Bob hasn't had the roughest life, but it also hasn't exactly been easy either. Now right now, Bob lives in a standard house and he doesn't make a ton of money, but he does make an average income from his job. And right next to Bob lives a guy named Bill. And Bob and Bill are not exactly best friends, but they do talk every other day, and Bob just recently moved into this house next to Bill, so he hasn't exactly known Bill for a very long time. Now, Bob is like so many of you watching this video, because like him, you all want to become rich and live an amazing lifestyle, and you want to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, and not have to take orders from other people. So to make this happen, before he moved next to Bill, Bob went out and bought a Toyota Camry, which is supposed to be a really reliable car that he can use to get to work and save money on repairs and cut his overall expenses down. But one day, Bob is outside washing his Toyota when he hears loud music and what sounds like a jet plane roaring down his street. So he looks over to see who or what it is, and to his surprise, it is Bill, his neighbor. But Bill isn't driving his old Jeep anymore, and instead, he is in what appears to be an exotic sports car. So Bill gets out of the car and Bob approaches him to ask him about the car, and Bill explains that he just bought it because Jim, who's Bill's neighbor on the other side, just bought a new Ferrari. And when Bill saw all the attention and validation that Jim was getting from his new car, he just had to go get one himself. So Bob didn't really know what to say, so he simply told Bill that he has a cool car, and then Bill went inside and Bob went back to washing his Toyota Camry. And as he stood there, spraying down his Toyota, Bob drifted off into a dreamlike state, and in this dream, Bob was cruising around in an exotic car of his own, maybe a Lamborghini, and everywhere that he would go, people would take out their phones and start recording him, almost like he was famous or something. And Bob is only human, so like me and you, he also feels a strong urge for social validation, because we all love it when other people like us, because it makes us feel special, important, and it makes us feel like we belong. So Bob continued for a few moments in this dreamlike state until he felt something wet on his pants and realized that he had accidentally started spraying his leg with the hose. So after this, Bob quickly rinsed the rest of his Toyota off and went inside. And Bob thought to himself, I don't really need a car like that. After all, the whole reason I bought a Toyota Camry was so that I could save money, invest it, and then get rich that way. But Bob couldn't help but feel a little bit of jealousy towards Bill, because Bill had a car that Bob told himself that he would buy when he finally made it one day, or when he finally got rich enough to actually afford it. So Bob went to sleep that night and then woke up the next day and got ready for work. And on his way to work, Bob realized that he was low on gas, so he decided to swing by the nearest gas station. And as he pulled in, he heard really loud music and what sounded almost like some sort of raging bull that had been set loose upon the town. And as he pulled up to one of the pumps, he looked over and he saw Bill pumping gas into his new exotic sports car. But Bob also noticed that Bill wasn't alone, and he was actually surrounded by a large group of people. And what had happened was that pretty much every single person who was getting gas when Bill pulled up had left their cars to walk over and take pictures and videos of Bill and his new car. Meanwhile, Bob looked down at his Toyota Camry and instantly felt like 10 times less of a man than Bill, and Bob quickly started to doubt himself and question whether or not it was really worth it to keep his Toyota. People had always told him that this was the way to get rich, but here was Bill, who worked the same type of job as him, lived in the same neighborhood, but somehow was able to afford an exotic Lamborghini. And at the same time, you also had Jim, who lived next to Bill, who also had an Italian sports car. So Bob started to wonder what it was that they knew that he didn't. So Bob finished pumping his gas, slid back into his Toyota, and snuck away to work, hoping that Bill didn't even notice him. I mean, how could he? Honestly, he was so occupied with all of these people who wanted to take his picture like he was a famous movie star or something. And later that night, Bob returned home, but he wasn't the same guy, and he was quickly overcome with feelings of inferiority because he wanted what Bill had. He wanted all of that social validation that you get from other people when you own and drive a Lamborghini or some other car like it. And he wanted to live that type of lifestyle instead of waiting until he was actually rich enough to afford it. And as a result of all of this pressure, Bob hatched a plan, and it would begin tomorrow. So the next day, Bob called in sick to work, got ready, and then took off in his Toyota to the nearest supercar dealership. And Bob traded in his Toyota Camry and pulled money from his savings account to put a down payment on a new Lamborghini. And let me tell you, it felt absolutely amazing. And when Bob pulled off the lot, he felt like a completely new man. And there was something about the sound and the style of that car that literally made him feel like he had finally made it. So Bob pulled up to the same gas station where he had saw Bill the other day, and like clockwork, people started leaving their cars at the pumps to come over and ask Bob about his new car and to also take pictures of him in it. And this external validation felt absolutely incredible, and it was like nothing Bob had ever experienced before. And this new attention quickly went to his head, and Bob started to feel famous. So after getting gas, Bob drove his new Lamborghini home, and as he pulled into his driveway, he saw Bill standing next to a moving truck that was parked in front of Bill's house. And Bob got out of his new Lambo, walked over to Bill, and asked him who was moving in with him. And Bill said, "Nobody's moving in, I'm actually moving out." And then Bill explained how he had spent all of his money on a new Lambo and never had any plan on how to use that Lambo to make him more money. So after a few months, he had no more money left and could no longer afford the rent on his house, so he was going to have to move back in with his parents. And Bob looked back over at his new Lamborghini, and although he felt absolutely amazing and excited about the car, he also realized that it was probably a big mistake that he had made in terms of his finances. So Bob finished telling Bill that he'll keep in touch with him, and then he went back into his house. And the next day, as Bob was pulling out of his driveway to go to work, he noticed another moving truck had also appeared outside of Jim's house, the guy with the Ferrari. And it was obvious that Jim was moving out as well. But Bob didn't want to feel bad about his new car, so he shrugged it off and he continued to the gas station on his way to work. And Bob continued to do this for about the next 2 months, and everywhere he would go, even on the highway, people would drive by and constantly take pictures and videos of him in his car. And the external validation that he received from this felt absolutely incredible, especially because Bob had never experienced anything like this before. But then it came time to have the Lambo serviced, and Bob found out that it would cost about half of a Toyota Camry to get a new clutch for his Lamborghini, or roughly $10,000. And after learning this, Bob had an important decision to make, and he basically had two choices. Choice number one was to keep the Lambo and to keep paying out enormous amounts of money to drive and maintain it, which would at the very least prevent him from becoming truly wealthy, and in a worst case scenario could cause him to end up like Bill. Now choice number two was to simply get rid of the Lambo until he knew how he could use it to make money, and at the same time lose all the external validation and attention that the car gave him every single day. Now it was a hard decision to make, but Bob ultimately decided on choice number two, and the next day he sold the Lamborghini back and cut his losses. One of the greatest secrets of the rich is learning how to be humble, or learning how to ignore the need for external validation that we get from luxury things like a huge house or a new Lamborghini. And at the end of the day, it feels really good to be validated by other people because of the car that you drive, the clothes that you wear, or the big house that you live in. But if you cannot temporarily stay humble enough to drive an old Toyota Camry or live in an average house and wear average clothes, then you will most likely never become truly rich. So with that said, don't make the same mistake as Bob, and instead wait until you can truly afford the Lamborghini rather than just buying it for validation. And until next time, I'm Julian, this is Business Secrets, and thank you so much for watching.